Welcome back to the Lines College Football Podcast. I'm Brett Gibbons with thelines.com, and as always, I'm joined by Kelley Ford. Kelley, we've only got a couple more weeks left. How are you feeling? How are you feeling about the season? How are you feeling about Saturday?
It's bittersweet, Brett, because you're right. There are only a couple weeks left, and this is the time of year that I absolutely love and crave. All of the college football season is fun for me. I cherish every single college football Saturday. We know this, but no, there's something special about November. There just is. And we saw it in week 10, which was the first week of November. It just, something about it. The weather is colder. You're getting snow. There is conference championship game leverage. And everywhere you look, they're talking about CFP rankings now. And how does this team slot into that picture and all that? You've got big rivalry games happening now and on the horizon here. This is just... This is like March, and for a college basketball fan, this is the reason that you love the sport. For me, it's November Saturdays, and I love them. I wish we had more of them. The reality is we don't. That's what makes them so special. So yes, we're going to enjoy it. It is sad that we're getting closer to the end, but it's the best time of year, so you can't even have time to be sad because you're just enjoying it so much. And then it's over, and you're like, oh, shoot, what just happened? So yeah, let's buckle up. Let's enjoy it. We have some massive games on the slate this Saturday. I know we're going to talk about them. I'm very excited, and college football fans should be as well, because these are the games that we've waited all year for.
Yes, and before we dive into it all, don't forget to follow the Lines on Twitter at TheLinesUS. I am at Road to CFB, and Kelley's work can be found at K Ford Ratings. We'll be here every single week for the remainder of the college football season and bowl season, which is right around the corner. Starting to do a little bit of light prep work for that. Breaking down all the college football slates as well as the individual weeknight games. If you're looking for our weeknight breakdowns, those are already posted. Go check them out. Anyway, look, I look at these slates and I scroll FB schedules like I have this thing open just permanently. And whenever I see all the ranked matchups, I'm like, oh, so great. But Kelley, the Pac-12 is really skewing our slate. The fact that all of the top teams waited until November to do the round-robin tournament, basically, into the college football playoff likely, we knew it was going to be a sprint, but this might be the most jam-packed action outside of the SEC West that we've had in quite some time, at least. Buckle up. We've got an exciting conclusion to Pac-12 football and all the football. But I want to start off with what I believe is, and some people may disagree, but to me, this is the marquee matchup of the day. We have number 3 Michigan, 4.5-point road favorites at number 10 Penn State. This game carries an over-under of 46 points. It kicks off at noon Eastern, such a shame, on Fox. If you're playing this game in Happy Valley, man, 7:30 whiteout, that's what, if you need a pump up for any reason, go to YouTube, find when the Penn State whiteout crowd forced a timeout on the opening play with Shea Patterson and Michigan.
That's right.
I
forgot about that.
Oh my God. I put my AirPods in, I put the noise cancel, I cranked that thing up as loud as it'll go. It's chills inducing. Yeah, it's a shame that's it.
Opening play. Like literally you come
Yes.
off, kick off, you're walking out there. Yeah, timeout real quick. I don't know. I'm confused what we're doing. Play one. Yes, I forgot about that, Brett. Thank you.
And Beaver State, the 100,000 plus that are going to be jammed into Beaver Stadium, they're still going to be incredibly loud. Like, noon doesn't matter. These folks will show up at 3:30 in the morning tailgating to get ready for this, especially with Michigan in town. Now, the over took some movement on Tuesday, bumped it up from 44.5 to 46. Not super significant, but not insignificant by any stretch. Penn State has an opportunity here at home, which I'm glad they're at home for this, to make the Big Ten East race just downright hilarious. Beat Michigan, and then you hope Michigan beats Ohio State. I don't know who would win in that case. We'd have to go to some really obscure tiebreakers, but it's those 3 teams that are left, and because Ohio State has the tiebreaker over Penn State, Nittany Lions are definitely on the outside looking into Indianapolis. Michigan, they have knocked some really dominant victories in this series. If you just scoreboard look, it's not as impressive, but this has not been a super tightly contested series over the past several years. Last year, it was that second half where they absolutely buried Penn State. That was one of the more dominant halves of football all year. And that includes Georgia's national championship game over TCU. It's right up there with it. Michigan has this is crazy. And it keeps getting crazier because we're in week 11. Michigan has yet to defend a first and goal on the season. They have 0 plays run inside their 10-yard line. All 6 touchdowns they've given up have been 20 yards or more. So we don't really have a blueprint on how to beat this Michigan team or even be successful, aside from, score 55 points and hope that they turn it over enough time to lose. And I'm just looking at the TCU College Football Playoff game from last year. That's really the only thing that we've seen beat this Michigan team. Right off the bat, even at home, I don't think Penn State has the makeup on offense or defense to win this game. I just don't. Ohio State found moderate success running the ball on them. Michigan can too. Drew Aller took some deep shots on Maryland, but he went just 1 for 6 on passes that traveled 20 or more yards down the field. I don't think that they have the fast pace or strong enough offense to score points. Again, even at home, I know big bump for Beaver Stadium. I gave them the full 3.5, but I just don't see it. J.J. McCarthy, on the other side, no sugarcoating it. It was kind of a joke for a while, but man, he's been downright excellent. Even opponent adjusted, even though they haven't really played anybody. Moves well in the pocket, has a really good feel for pressure. Great reads. He's only 5 turnover-worthy throws this season versus 19 big-time throws according to PFF. He's second in passer rating, 4th in adjusted completion rate. Again, you can look at the defenses he's playing. They're cannon fodder. They're not great, but you can still see the way that he progresses through reads, the timing, the footwork. If you're into that kind of stuff, he's got it all. He's been playing out of his mind lately. For Penn State, I would be watching the status of Chop Robinson. He left the Ohio State game with an injury, has not played since. He is hopeful to return. He is a difference maker on defense.
He absolutely is a difference maker on defense, Brett, for a defense that I have the power ranking of number 1 in the entire country. Brett, I've had this game circled since August or before, if we're being honest. I know I'm not the only one. People listening to this, watching this, they're in the same boat. Even if you're not a Big Ten fan or a fan of these teams, just like I'm not a fan of Alabama or LSU, you circle the Alabama-LSU game. You just do. This game has a watchability score, Brett, of 9.9. That is on a scale of 0 to 10. It is dang near impossible to get any better because 10 is a theoretical limit. Somebody asked me, how do you get a 10? You don't. You can't. It's impossible. You cannot score a 10. It's a 9.9. Brett, it's the number 2 game of the entire regular season by my numbers, behind only Ohio State and Michigan, which we're going to get here in 2 weeks. I have Michigan actually, Brett, -1 in this game with a 53% win expectancy. So I'm a little bit higher on Penn State or lower on Michigan, probably a combination of the two than Vegas is in this one. I do think if this game was at night, you would see, as you mentioned, that line of Michigan -4.5 be a little bit lower, be a little bit closer to a pick'em. Just the timing of the game. My numbers aren't accounting for that. I know Vegas certainly does, as they should. But I do think Michigan should be counting their lucky Big 12 or Big 10 Fox, big noon kickoff on Fox stars here, because if this game was at night in the whiteout, it would be a whole different story. The fans are still going to be pumped, as you said. You said they might wake up at 3:30. Brett, they might not go to bed. Like they might they might power nap on Friday afternoon and say, let's do this thing. We're waking up at 11 o'clock Friday night and we're just rolling straight through for 12 hours to pregame. So, Michigan's number 1 in my power ratings, and this is 3 straight weeks that they've been there. It's fair to question the difficulty of Michigan's schedule. Like, it absolutely is. Objectively, you can do that. But the Wolverines are number 1 in my relative scoring margin. They're outscoring their opponents by 15.3 points per game more than would be expected of the average top 25 FBS team. So what that's doing is saying, okay, let's look at your opponents and how are you playing against them? How bad are you beating them relative to what would be expected? So it's a way of normalizing the opponent difficulty. So even though Michigan's not playing difficult opponents, they are beating them by a bigger margin than the average top 25 FBS team would be expected to, and they're doing it at a higher rate than any other team in the country against their schedule relative to what would be expected of the average top 25 team against that schedule. So when you normalize it, Michigan's still coming out as like this dominant team. And that's the reason that they're number 1 in the power ratings for me and for many others. I mentioned this already, Brett. The Wolverines have the nation's number 1 defense. They have the number 5 offense by my numbers. This is a strong, balanced team. I am very excited to see how they handle their first big test of the season because they just haven't been tested yet. It's not necessarily their fault. I know the non-conference they control. Fine. This is a big test. They're going to a tough environment. We're going to see what this Michigan team's all about in this game. Penn State has been in the top 5 of my power ratings every single week since week 5. The defense has been in the top 5 the entire season. They're currently number 4. The big question, Brett, for me continues to be, can Drew Aller and the number 22 offense score enough points to win? The only other game this season in which Penn State didn't have a big talent advantage on the field was on the road at Ohio State. Penn State could only muster one touchdown. That came late in the fourth quarter. This game's in Happy Valley, so that is a big deal. We've talked about it a couple times already. That's a big deal for the Nittany Lions' chances here. But ultimately, even though I'm saying it's Michigan -1, the model needs to see Penn State and that offense do it before it really believes that the Nittany Lions can win this big one. You look at James Franklin's record against everybody, and then you look at his record against Ohio State and Michigan. I said it before the Penn State-Ohio State game. At some point, he's going to start getting these wins, and it's going to flip like it did for Jim Harbaugh against Ohio State just a couple years ago, and it hasn't flipped back. When is it going to flip? It didn't happen against Ohio State. Is it going to happen in this one? We'll see. Bottom line, I have Michigan -1. It's a 47% chance that Penn State throws that wrench in the Big Ten East race. Brett, Ohio State's been my favorite by the model's percentages. Ohio State's been the favorite to win the East all year. It started because Ohio State was the best power-rated team out of the group. At various points this season, Penn State and Michigan now have both been above Ohio State, but because of when those changes happened and when Ohio State already has the head-to-head advantage over Penn State, we haven't seen the favorite flip. If Michigan beats Penn State this week, Michigan will be the model's favorite to win the East going into Week 12 and then presumably going into Week 13 in the game as well.
Look, I'm not a model-based bettor. That's why I have you on here, because you have a model that's proven. That's where we get your numbers from. The reason I couldn't be just a model-based bettor is because when it prints out Michigan -1, I have to take the situation into account. And if
Fair.
I can't take, I'm a situation and information bettor. I trust my eyes. I've worked in football recruiting. I trust my eyes. I trust what I see. There's no reality in which I'm betting James Franklin big spots like these. None. You say that there will be a time that it turns around and Harbaugh's, dude, I don't know. I really don't think so. He's perpetually awful against Michigan, Ohio State. I don't think this is the game in which he turns it around and figures it out. This is Michigan with the points for me. I would lay it up to 6. The other way that you can attack this is because we're in that ambiguous 4.5. I feel like we get one of these every week. It's when the odds makers don't really know what to do with it. And they're like, here, we'll let the market figure it out. And then the market's looking at it, well, it's a dead number. I'm not going to take it. This is an opportunity for you to decide, is this number going to close closer to 6 or is it going to close closer to 3? If you think it's going to close closer to 3, bet Penn State now. If you think it's going to close closer to 6, take Michigan. I happen to think it's going to close closer to a touchdown, so I took Michigan. There's few times in which I feel really confident about big games like this. I like to use an information edge and attack games that don't have as many eyeballs on them. This one, you're probably not going to have the numbers edge against the market, but I feel pretty darn good about it because I don't have a lot of confidence in Penn State against the top of the league right now. So, and just to throw this out there, I don't think Harbaugh's going to be suspended or disciplined or anything right now. Michigan threatened a lawsuit. I just don't see this happening this year. So if you're really worried about that being a distraction, I don't think so. If anything, it's giving Michigan more fuel to go out there and kick everyone's ass on the way out before they get something going. So Michigan with the points for me in what I think to be the biggest game of the week.
Two things, Brett. I realize as I'm sitting here reviewing what I just said, you were talking about the injury status of Chop Robinson, and then I proceeded to make a comment about the Michigan defense. Of course, he's playing on the Penn State defense that I have number 4 in the entire country. So clarify that one. Yes, I do know Chop Robinson and where he's playing on which side of the field here, or for which team, I should say. The other one, Brett, and I realize we can't, it'll be really hard and we'll forget because it'll be years down the line probably. I just think, and you're saying I don't think this is the game that James Franklin gets over the hump and flips the script. That's fair. And maybe it's not. I mean, Vegas is saying it's not. My numbers are saying it's not. I think he's just too good of a coach for it to not happen at any point. And sometimes coaches don't. Really good coaches just don't get over that hump and they don't end up winning the games against the biggest teams that they play. I think a couple things are going to happen, though. You know, Penn State, with the doing away of divisions in the Big Ten, Penn State's not going to have to play Ohio State and Michigan every single year. So I think if we can if Penn State can find themselves in a situation where they're not playing both of those teams every single year, and they can put themselves maybe in a Big Ten championship game that's at a neutral site where both teams have had, equal time to prepare and all these different things, that could be a chance for him to get over that hump at a neutral site in a game where a lot's on the line. there's also I just feel like he's too good of a coach, and he recruits at a high level. I know he's had some concerns about how Penn State's set up with NIL and all those different things, but they've seemingly taken care of some of the things that he's needed and wanted. He's still there, and he seems relatively happy. So I think he's just too good. And again, we won't know that for many years, maybe, and the receipts will be gone by then. But that's my own gut feel about it. You say you take information based in that. My gut feel just tells me he's too good to stay down forever against these teams.
We could have an hour-long podcast about James Franklin. Be happy to do a separate one, but unfortunately, we don't have the time on this one. We do have to press forward. We have Temple. I'm sorry, going from Penn State, Michigan we have Temple on the road at USF. South Florida is a 7-point home favorite in this game, carries a lovely over-under of 68.5 points. Kicks off at noon Eastern on ESPN+. We're going from high level to low level, but like I said, I like to highlight different teams, different games, different conferences, and also try to find edges in games that may not have a lot of eyes on it or the full grasp. This series has been a lot of fun lately. Lots of scoring. 72 combined points, over 1,000 yards of total offense last year. We had talked about it on our weeknight episode, and I teased we talked about how valuable quarterbacks can be to a point spread in college, because in college, offenses are system-based unless you have one of the elite quarterbacks, whereas the NFL is player-based. This is one of the games in which I think a quarterback is truly, truly worth something serious to the point spread. E.J. Warner returned last week. He threw for another 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. Temple was an outright winner. Really enjoyed that one. It was part of a nice round robin that'll buy me a nice steak dinner, but they turned the ball over 4 times, and they still won by 14 points. Like, this could have been an absolute decimation of Navy. That said, I don't know that the weight of E.J. Warner is appropriately priced into the market. I don't think it is, to be honest, seeing the opening numbers and seeing that Temple's been a darling in the market, at least not at open. The opening marks, I think, are not counting him enough. In my opinion, he's one of the most valuable players in the entire country. And that includes Jaden Daniels. That includes the highest level quarterbacks in the entire country, Michael Penix. I think Warner's worth more to the point spread than either of those guys because of the relative talent level around him versus what you have at Washington. The safety net behind Warner is 0. The quarterback that steps in for him for Temple's atrocious. Now, let's talk about USF. Their defensive metrics, in my opinion, they're a bit skewed. This unit is, bottom line, terrible. They've allowed 55 or more points in 3 of their last 4 games. Big time regression from the start of the year where they quote unquote, held Alabama to 17 points. I'm not so certain that wasn't just Alabama holding themselves to that. But either way, they're bottom 15 in points per quality possession allowed. Both of these teams, to be honest, they're really bad. The bottom line, they're near the bottom of the country in turnover margin. USF is 124th. They actually have a positive turnover margin the last 3 games. They've been getting it together a little bit in that front. Temple, on the other hand, they're the absolute worst. They have a -8 turnover margin in their last 3 outings. There really won't be a defense played on either side of the football in this one, and both offenses run top 20 paces. Now, the total for me comes down to whether or not these teams, whether or not we believe these teams are going to finish drives all the time. USF, 84th in points per quality possession. Shout out Parker Frumling, Stats of War on Twitter. Have to give credit where credit is due. He puts out amazing advanced stats, breakdowns of these games, and that's where I'm getting the points per quality possession from. USF is 84th in that department. Temple 75th. When you're betting over a total like 68, and I saw 67 earlier on the board, it's been moved up, that leaves you with no room for error, even with fast-paced and turnover-prone teams against bad defenses. You have to score on almost every single possession. And based on the metrics, the points per quality possession, these teams don't do that regularly, even though they are lighting up the scoreboard from time to time. These two teams are 2nd and 3rd worst in red zone scoring rate as well. It's not going to be a fun one to sweat out, but I think I'm going to take under 68. I hate saying that, but I'm going to fade against, with 2 or 3 turnovers and a couple of drives in which they stall out, potentially even in the red zone, for an under 68.
Brett, we went from the number 1 game of the day and the number 2 game of the regular season to a true sickle alert here. Yeah, man, we got a watchability score of 2.7. Hey, I understand why we're talking about it. It's just a little different than the 9.9 we had. USF -11. That's what the model says. It's a 79% win expectancy. Brett, this was interesting to me as I was like prepping for this game in particular. 4 of the bottom 5 FBS defenses, by my numbers, reside in the American. These teams are 2 of them. Temple's defensive unit is number 129. USF's is number 131. They're both really bad on this side of the ball. There's really not a nicer way to say it. That's the reality. Temple isn't much better on the offensive side of the ball either. They rank number 111. Overall, the Owls are the 3rd worst team in FBS by my numbers, the worst power-rated team that USF will face all season. The only unit in this game that's really played at a truly respectable level, I would say, relative to FBS average, is the USF offense. They are currently at a season-best number 75. That unit, plus the fact that this game is in Tampa, is what makes the difference for me in this one. Bottom line, I've got USF minus 11. It's a 21% chance that Temple pulls off the upset here on the road.
And this is why I want to talk about this one, because I think Temple is not only alive again in the spread, I think they're alive to win the game outright again. And that because I really, truly believe Warner's worth at least a touchdown to the spread. And the numbers that come out in the models are taking into account full season. They do. I'm sure yours, we won't give out the Krabby Patty formula, but I'm sure yours weight certain things differently to make sure that they are accounting for more recent results rather than, well, in week 0, they did whatever. I just think this team is completely different with EJ Warner, and I'm going to take advantage of that until I see what I estimate is an appropriate priced team. They weren't appropriately priced last week. We saw that. I don't think they're appropriately priced again this week with a misleading box score. So, Temple, honestly, take them outright. That's the way I'm going to go. If you're not, if you don't have the intestinal fortitude to bet under in this game, which I don't know that I love it. I bet it, but I don't know if I love it. I would take probably Temple at anything at +7 or better. Okay, we're doing a lot of whiplash today. I hope you have a nice neck pillow because we're going from the best game of the week to maybe the worst game of the week. That's also one of the highest scoring to potentially the lowest scoring game of all time. We have Rutgers on the road at number 22 Iowa. The Hawkeyes are 1-point favorites. Kelly, this game carries an over-under of 28.5 points.
Brett, again, and you made the note, it's the lowest opening total in FBS history. I understand because we're talking about Iowa here, and to be fair, like Rutgers, not to that level, but they're stronger on the defensive side and have struggled on offense at times this year. To me, though, this game, just on the surface, if you said this is the game that has the lowest opening total of any FBS game in history, I would have said no way. Like, this just doesn't feel to me like it should open lower than some of the Army-Navy games that we've seen recently. Any Iowa game against other teams that they played recently. That's surprising to me. It really is. I'm not saying that it's not going to go under. I'm saying it's surprising to me that this is the game that odds makers said we're going to go down to 28.5. It's surprising.
Before I comment on that, because I will, this game does kick off at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on Big Ten Network. That's where this game belongs. A game like this is absolutely Big Ten Network material. Kelly, I took under 28.5.
Yes.
I did. These Iowa games aren't coming anywhere near. Like, they're not. 20 is honestly probably a more appropriate over-under for this game, but no one in their minds would rightfully hang that number. They just won't. Out of principle, I don't know, out of something, they just won't hang 20, but in my opinion, that's where this game should be at.
I'm looking back. So last week, 17 was the total. The week before that, they were off. The week before that was Minnesota, 22 was the total. Wisconsin before that was 21. Like, that was a total that was scored in the game. Prior to that, though, their lowest total was 31 prior to that one. So they've, in the last 3 games, had outings of 22 or less. Prior to that, though, it was 31 or more. So,
and
for trends.
And who's been the quarterback lately?
You're right.
I'll talk about
you're right. You're right.
One of your guys, one of your absolute favorites, somebody you credit with helping the foundation of K Ford ratings, Brian Fremeau, he projects an 8-5 final. His numbers give you just a shade over 13 total, and he's pretty sharp on totals.
He is. Brian's great. If Brian says this game's going to have a total of 13, let's see what Bill Connolly says. And if he says it's going to be down there near 22, Brett, by all means, put down 2 units on the under 28.5.
But from one really good Brian to one really bad Brian Ferentz is he's working on an expired contract. He's gone after the bowl game. That was big, sad news. We saw that happening. Rutgers, on the other hand, they were actually able to get things going on the ground against Ohio State. Iowa has not allowed 100 yards on the ground in 4 of the last 5 games, and they only allowed a $113 in Minnesota. That's it. So we're talking right around 100. Teams are not getting over that. This is probably unpopular. I know it's unpopular because I've said it to other people. As unlucky as that pick 6 was for Rutgers against Ohio State, look, they had a double snap play. Ohio State's punter went rogue and didn't pick up a first down. I'm not convinced the Ohio State cover was as fraudulent as it was preached. The reason being, Greg Schiano, man loves his field goals. You're not going to beat Ohio State with field goals because your talent is not going to win out. But Kelly, you might be able to beat Iowa with field goals if we're being honest here. Now, will Rutgers get inside the 5-yard line as often as they did against Ohio State against Iowa? I don't know. In my estimation, Iowa's defense is a little bit friskier than Ohio State's. They create a bit more havoc. They broke out all the stops last week, in my opinion, at home, and now they're on the road in a very, very difficult environment to play in, especially when you start getting into November. The Iowa's offense isn't even worth breaking down. I don't know, man. Cooper DeJean did play offense, finally, which is great, and he actually looked really good. People have been calling for that since, last year. The quarterback, Deacon Hill, I did ask who the quarterback was. That's who's playing right now. He has the highest drop rate in the country, but even without the drops and throwaways, he has just a 58.5% adjusted completion rate. Awful. And I don't know that that's all scheme. That's a little bit of talent when you start talking about that. That's why I asked about the recent results, because that's what their team is today. Rutgers against Ohio State was missing their stud nose tackle and their top linebacker. That linebacker is out for the year, so they won't have him back, but they're expected to get their nose tackle back. But they still did a pretty decent job last week. I'm going to say they were very out-talented by Trevion Henderson and Chip Trayanum, but I still thought they did an okay job against the run. All right, what do your numbers say?
Iowa's a ranked team, man, and they deserve to be. I have them number 25 and my most deserving. The committee's got them there in the top 25 as well. So it just highlights a point I've made before. It's such a shame for the Iowa fan base, for the state of Iowa. I mean, don't tell the Cyclone fans, but like, this team has just been set back by the offense for not just this year, not just last year, for years now. And it's such a shame because if they just had an offense with a pulse, this team would be contending not just for the Big Ten, as they have in recent years, but for spots in the CFP on a year-in and year-out basis. It seems the defense has just been so good. Brett, the game has a watchability score of 7.5. I have often been criticized for having games that involve Iowa so, quote, highly rated in the watchability scores. There's nothing in my formula for watchability that explicitly downgrades teams or game scores for bad offense. I understand that in today's American society, we like to see points. That transcends just football. That's every sport. You want to see offense. That's what's exciting. That's what people want to see. I enjoy good defense better than good offense, if I'm being completely honest. I know I'm in the minority on that, but the watchability scores aren't looking at, your points per game on offense or your offensive power ranking for the unit. So 7.5. It's pretty darn good. I expect this to be a competitive game. Again, Iowa is a top 40 power rated team. Their resume's in the top 25. And Rutgers is a pretty darn good team too in their own right, especially for where that program's been in recent years. So I have Iowa -4 in this game. So 61% win expectancy. By now, we all know the story about Iowa. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. The defense, they're elite. They're number 2 in the nation for me, behind only Michigan. The offense is horrific. They're number 122. It's the worst of any Power 5 offense in the entire country, and it's not necessarily that close. But overall, from a power rating standpoint, Iowa now has a power rating of 5.7, a corresponding ranking of number 40. This is the worst the Hawkeyes have been power rated all season by my numbers. So they're trending in the wrong direction. It still might not matter, though, Brett, at least in the Big Ten West race. Iowa is currently a huge favorite. They'll still be the favorite in that race, even if they lose to Rutgers this week. It's a conference game, but not a division game, which in the Big Ten West, those division games are like gold, and they give them away like candy on Halloween. You see it every single year. But anyway, Iowa, they're in a good spot. Even if they lose this one, they're probably going to be in Indianapolis. If they can get the win here, it would only bolster those chances all the better. While this is the worst that Iowa's been power rated all year, Brett, with a 4.2 rating this week, it's the best that Rutgers has been power rated all season for me. It's 6-3. Rutgers has 2.3 more wins than my preseason realistic expectations projected for Rutgers through week 10. That's good enough for number 9 in my overachievers list. Greg Schiano doing a great job in Piscataway yet again. This is not his first time there, and he's doing it again, pulling off the magic that we've seen before. Scarlet Knights offense is number 76, but that's the defense, as I talked about earlier, that's really impressive. They're number 32. Both defenses are the stronger unit in this game by quite a bit. We understand that's why the opening total here is the lowest you've seen in FBS history. But like I said, that does surprise me a little bit that this is the game that oddsmaker said we're going down to 28.5. I know you bet the under, Brent, and I know Brian's saying 8-5. I would absolutely love an 8-5 score line. Are you kidding me? That would be incredible and so fitting. I'm still surprised though that this is it, because I think this Iowa defense and the special teams, they can score 14 points. Like, they can do it right there on their own. They don't do it every week, of course, but they have the talent and ability on that side of the ball, especially when they're playing offenses that have the profile of a Rutgers, to do that. So bottom line, Iowa -4. It's a 39% chance that Rutgers earns their first ever win, Brett, in this series against the Hawkeyes. They are currently 0-3 all time in a series that dates all the way back to Rutgers' illustrious career in the Big Ten, history of the Big Ten. 2016 was the first meeting for these programs.
I said that I took the under. I'm also taking Iowa at the points. In my opinion, they're just the better team, cut and dry, at least defensively. I think that defense is plenty good enough. Rutgers' offense does not scare me. Like I said, they broke out kind of all the stops last week in a last grasp effort. And I like Rutgers. Like, I do. They're a great team having a fantastic season. Let's not get carried away here. I'm not taking Iowa on the money line because I don't see fair value there based on the spread. But if you're taking -1, at the very worst, if they win by 1, then you push, and it's not a loss. But yeah, Iowa -1 for me, even though Rutgers has been taking the points. I think a lot of that is because it's so low of a total, you can take the points. Like, that's just traditional betting, savviness. But no, Iowa's the better team to me. I'm laying the point.
They're at home. They're at home.
And they're at home. Yes, and Kinnick Stadium is. You mean to tell me that people are favoring Rutgers on neutral field? No thanks.
That's my numbers. My numbers aren't, Brett. That's why I got Iowa -4, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not. So I think there's value here for what you're talking about.
Market's telling me that. I don't buy it. Iowa's the better football team. I'm taking Iowa here. All right, we have a Big 12 matchup that I think is fascinating for some reasons. I do have some insight in here. We've number 15 Oklahoma State, 2.5-point road favorites at UCF. That number might be surprising to some. I'll get into why here in a minute. It carries an over-under of 64.5 points, and it kicks off at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN's main channel. These two teams have never played before. I do like new matchups, and I know UCF is newer to the FBS and, of course, brand new to the Big 12. This is the first time they've ever met. Oklahoma State has not played in the state of Florida in the regular season since 2005. Listen to this. They visited FAU, but they played it at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami because FAU was playing at a soccer/high school stadium in Fort Lauderdale at the time. I love my college football lore. There's a little nugget for you.
That's great history, Brett. No way I ever would have known that. I love it.
Anyway, superstar running back Ollie Gordon, absolutely terrific. He was banged up for Oklahoma State last week. He kept going out of the game, and I kept adding him to my little injury report as left week 10, but then he just came back in. But he was very hurt that game. Very hurt. It's absolutely worth monitoring his status this week. He's a big cog to this offense. UCF, they're 112th in rushing success rate allowed this season. So if Ollie Gordon goes and he's looking good, maybe not 100%, but 90%, he's going to have a pretty good day. UCF has given up 250 rush yards in their last 2 games. They gave up 400 to Kansas. You can run on them a little bit, to say the least. And Oklahoma State, pretty good rushing team. On the other end, the Knights it looks like they are getting Xavier Townsend back, their top wide receiver. John Rice Plumlee's finally getting healthier. He's been in and out of the lineup and banged up. And, of course, they handle the Pokes at home. They also broke a 5-game losing streak, but it came against Cincinnati, who they might not be the worst team in the Big 12, but they're not far off the bottom. And they barely beat them at that. To be honest, I don't think UCF is very good. They've been hurt, but I don't think that they're that great. And maybe it's just because it's a big letdown because I had some dark horse expectations for them preseason, but it's neither here nor there. The games, they haven't really been that close either recently. They did catch OU in their own situational spot after the Texas game. West Virginia, Kansas just beat the hell out of them. I do have to note, though, that John Rice Plumlee was in and out of the lineup, whatever. Either way, this, to me, is the letdown spot of all letdown spots for Oklahoma State. Situationally, like if you bet situations in college football, you're going to do really well. I plug my upset article once a week. We're like 20 and I think 20 and 11 with a push with like 4 outright upsets. This won't be on there because I only do 10 point spreads or more. So just to give you an insight on that. Big time letdown spot. I don't think UCF is that great, but hitting the road after that final Bedlam win that now the Pokes can ride off into the sunset with, who cares what the record in that rivalry was? They got the last laugh twice, and they're taking that with them forever, and they absolutely should, especially since Oklahoma's the one that stepped out on that rivalry. If Ollie Gordon plays and is healthy, Oklahoma State's going to be able to score a bunch of points, but again, the situation just makes it absolutely impossible for me to lay points with the Pokes, and you've seen it in the market. UCF's plus threes that got bought up.
Brett, can we go back for a second? You said your upset article that you write every single week, your record in games that you're picking a spread of 10 or more, you're 21 and 11 against the spread, and you've got 4 outright winners of 10 points or more. Underdogs of 10 points or more.
That is true, yeah.
Brett, that is incredible.
And I'm telling you, this isn't model-based. This isn't information-based. This isn't injury-based. This is purely looking at schedule and situation spots. Look-aheads, letdowns, travel. That's it.
Guys, if you are listening to this, watching this, and you're not reading Brett's upset article of every single week, and you do bet college football. So I don't bet college football. I still like talking college football and looking at the things that Brett's putting out. But if you're betting college football and you're not reading Brett's article, you are quite literally leaving money on the table. Like, that is insane, Brett. That is awesome. Very cool. I need to start coming to you. I'm in this competition where I'm supposed to pick an upset of, you get the number of points that the team is an upset or is an underdog. So if a team is an underdog by 9.5 and you pick them and you're in this competition and they win, you get 9.5 points. If you pick an underdog of 17 points and they win, you get 17 points. If you pick the underdog and they lose outright, you don't get any points that week. So it's kind of a risk-reward type deal. I have a formula that I use, picked a couple of them this year, but I got to start coming to you for some advice on those, man, because that is awesome. You've had 4 outright winners of 10 points or less.
19, 11, and 1 with 4 outright upsets, and we are 6-2 in the last 3 weeks.
Get out of here. That is awesome. Guys, make sure you are checking out Brett's article over there at thelines.com. That is very, very cool, Brett. What day of the week does that drop?
That'll come out usually on Thursdays.
Thursdays. Got it. Cool. I need to make a note so that I can do that and take a look too, because I got to put my pick in for the competition I do on Fridays. So I'll be using my cheat sheet, which is Brett Gibbons' article. Okay, for this game, I've got a watchability score of 7.9 on this one. Brett, I actually have it as a pick'em. I know you said you're low on UCF. The model has it as a pick'em. 52% win expectancy for Oklahoma State here. Fresh off that massive win in Bedlam. You touched on it. They can never take it away from Oklahoma State now. Oklahoma walked out. Oklahoma State said, thanks. Don't let the door hit you. We've won 2 of the last 3 on our home field. We're going to win the last one that's scheduled here. They will play again. It kind of rubbed me wrong on the broadcast. They're like, this is the last Bedlam. And I was like, well, it's the last Bedlam we have scheduled. So, yes, I understand that. But these teams will play again. They're too good not to. Bad blood, I think time will heal these wounds. They'll bring it back, and hopefully it will be an annual thing again down the road. I have to hope that we're going to get that because there's no reason that we shouldn't. I am so disappointed, Brett, to go back to Bedlam real quick. So disappointed. So they talked about it on the broadcast. This was the second longest consecutive rivalry that's been played, meaning they played every single year. It's the second longest matchup that's been played every single year in college football history, behind only Minnesota and Wisconsin, and now it comes to an end next year. It's very sad for college football fans.
We'll see how fast Oklahoma picks up the phone and reschedules this, because if they would have won, we may have never seen it again outside of bowls. But because they lost those last 2, they're going to be hearing some little birdies chirping. I have a feeling they're going to pick up the phone too. But
good point. Lost 2 of the last 3, both in Stillwater there. Yeah, absolutely. So Oklahoma State, 5-game winning streak. There is a lot of green, Brett, on this team dashboard that I'm looking at here on the website for me. From a resume standpoint, the Cowboys are number 20 in my most deserving rankings. The committee's got them even higher than that. They're number 19 in my record achievement metric, number 31 in my relative scoring margin metric. All of those things are season best, therefore the green. From a power rating standpoint, Oklahoma State has an 8.4 rating, a number 30 corresponding ranking. Both of those season best, more green for this team. The offense is number 29. The defense is number 42. Both of those season best. Brett, everything that we're looking at here, resumes, power ratings, it doesn't matter. Oklahoma State is at a season best level. There's two ways of looking at that. You can continue on that trend. More times than not, though, what we see is it's a peak right now. Peaks and valleys are defined as they are for a reason. You come back. You either regress or progress to the mean more times than not when you're on these trajectories. Oklahoma State fans hoping they can keep riding this wave. The odds say at some point you're going to come back to earth a little bit. Doesn't mean you're going to regress way the heck down the power ratings, but teams can't rise every single week for the whole season. It just doesn't work that way in anything that we do in life. College football is no exception. 52% chance. That's what my numbers give right now to the Pokes to make it to Arlington. Everything is pointing up for Oklahoma State at the moment. This game should be tricky, though, by what my model is looking at. Despite just a 1-5 record in conference play, my number suggests UCF will be a stiff challenge for the Cowboys in this game. UCF, number 42 in the power ratings. They have a top 25 offense. The defense, though, currently a season worst number 62. That, to me, is the concern for the Knights in this game. It is in Orlando, the bounce house. That could be the equalizer here. We will see how excited UCF fans get for this game with the season having not gone the way that many would have hoped in their maiden voyage here in the Power 5 in the Big 12. Bottom line, Brett, I have this as a pick'em. It's a 52% win expectancy for Oklahoma State. You touched on this. It's the first ever meeting between these programs. Oklahoma State would love to get on the board here, too, and say, man, we've really owned our rival Oklahoma recently. We've never lost to UCF. Look at us. We're just rolling at this point in time. Oklahoma State fans are excited. Brett, I do have to say, my numbers in the preseason, Texas and Oklahoma. Those were the two teams, along with Vegas and everybody else, that the numbers said, hey, this is who's most likely. But when we talked about sleeper teams, I distinctly remember, I mentioned, Kansas State, but I said Oklahoma State has a schedule. It's very easy relative to the rest of the teams in the Big 12. They have a schedule that sets up in such a way that Oklahoma State could be in this Big 12 championship race late into November. Only one loss in conference play so far, and it's probably not the one. If you would have said they have one loss going into Week 11, you probably wouldn't have thought it was Week 4 at Iowa State, but that's where they are. They're absolutely rolling right now. The numbers did suggest that the schedule was setting up in such a way that Oklahoma State might be able to take advantage. Well, if they get past this one, Brett, my numbers like them by 7.5 at Houston and 11.5 at home to BYU. If they get past this one, hey, upsets happen every week. We always see it. But Oklahoma State's got to feel really good about their chances to make it to Arlington. I'm going to say something that people probably won't like and might get me in trouble. I don't know. I don't care. It's how I feel. And it's harder now with the amount of realignment that we're getting in college football after this year. I am rooting for teams to make their conference championship games, the teams that are remaining in that conference moving forward. So I guess that means in the Pac-12, I'm rooting for Oregon State and Washington State, but I'm rooting for teams like Oklahoma State. I would like to see in the final year of this alignment, teams that are remaining where they are. And I'm not begrudging anybody who's moving. I understand why it's all happening. I get it. I really do. And I don't hate these teams. Just something inside me wants the teams that are staying in their current conferences to have a chance to win them this year, and Oklahoma State certainly fits that bill.
Imagine saying that they were in control of their own Big 12 championship game destiny on October 1st. That's not even that long ago.
Dude,
the bye week changed everything for this team. Yep. They're a completely new team. All right, moving forward, we have maybe, in my estimation, the second best game of the day, but I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there that said, nope, this is my number one game of the day. We have number 9 Ole Miss on the road at number 2 Georgia. Georgia's an 11-point home favorite. This game carries an over-under 59 points. Kicks off at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. This is one of these matchups where I looked at and said, do these teams ever play? Kind of like Georgia and Texas A&M, but it's one of those weird SEC matchups, cross-divisional ones, where they never play. They've only played 5 times since 2002. They have not met since 2016, which is now 7 full years ago, if you can believe it or not. But Lane Kiffin, Kirby Smart, never coached against each other. They were both on Alabama staff together in 2014 and 2015. I did this last year. It was pretty successful last year. Dude, I'm never convinced about Ole Miss, and I'm not sure what there is to convince me. They beat teams in a vaunted SEC West. They have a decent resume, but look, they could have very well lost to Tulane. That was probably the most misleading box score of any game of the entire season. They beat an LSU team that probably can't stop your local high school varsity offense. They beat them in a shootout. They squeaked by both Auburn and Arkansas, which in my opinion are lesser opponents. And then they needed a last-second tipped field goal to not go to overtime with Texas A&M, who's on their backup quarterback. I don't know, man. They do this every year. I don't want to title them frauds because I don't know if they're totally frauds, but they get to the point where I think they're overrated in both rankings and power ratings. Georgia, well, they appear to be on the same track that Nick Saban and Alabama have been doing for years. They round into form just as soon as you start hearing the doubts that are becoming more and more audible by the week. However, Ole Miss, they do have a bit of kind of the same blueprint that Missouri does. They have a quarterback that has improved. Jackson Dart is a much better quarterback this year than he was last year. They have an elite receiver, Trey Harris, not Luther Burden, but he's playing out of his mind right now in a really strong run game. The biggest thing that I'm looking for here is late downs, though. Ole Miss is outside the top 90 in late downs on both offense and defense. In Georgia, they're elite on late downs on both sides of the football. What do your numbers say about this SEC blockbuster?
My numbers, Brett, say this game has a watchability score of 9.6. It's my number 2 game of the week. So, I mean, if you want to say it's number 1, folks out there, if you're in the SEC country, you probably do think it's number 1, and I won't argue that. It's a really, really good game. It's the number 12 game of the regular season by my watchability scores. I'm very excited for this one. And, Brett, I'm with you. I couldn't believe these two teams haven't played since 2016. To me, that's actually one good thing about conference realignment. There aren't many, in my opinion, but one good one is you're seeing the doing away of divisions, which is part of that's bad because you're losing some of the historic rivalries that you've seen year in and year out. But you're able to play now with how we're approaching scheduling across the country, everybody in your conference more frequently. You're losing some of the every single year matchups, but you're getting everybody else in the conference on a more regular basis. I like that. I do think you should be playing teams in your conference, every second, third year, fourth year at a minimum. So I'm excited about that. I'm beating a dead horse here. I know. Georgia should not be ranked number 2 in the CFP rankings. They should not be. The Bulldogs are number 7 in both my most deserving rankings and my power ratings. There is no 2023 metric for me that indicates Georgia should be in the top 4 yet, let alone number 2. The committee's rewarding them for its predecessors, meaning 2021 and 2022 Georgia teams, for their achievements. And to me, that's just wrong. I'll leave it at that. Georgia has the opportunity in front of them to have a top 4 resume, and they likely will. But at this point, I don't think they do, and I don't like the message that the committee is sending from a resume or a power rating standpoint. That said, I still have Georgia -7 in this game, which I know is not as much as Vegas, but it's a 69% win expectancy for the Dogs. The Georgia defense has been in the top 11 all season for me. They're currently ranked number 5. Similarly, the offense hasn't been lower than number 12 all season. They're currently number 6 for me. This team might not be, actually, it's not might. This team is not as elite as the 2021 or 2022 Georgia Bulldogs teams. But that doesn't mean this team isn't really good, because they are. This is a very good Georgia team. They're favored in each of their remaining games, 39 against ULM next week, 13.5. That's Ole Miss. If I go to the Georgia schedule here, they're favored by 2.5 at Tennessee next week. So that's going to be a tough game as well. And then 18 at Georgia Tech to end the year. So my numbers like them in each of these games against tough teams, including Ole Miss and Tennessee. But they're still not on the level that we've seen in recent years. I have Ole Miss number 6 in my most deserving rankings. That's actually one spot ahead of where I have Georgia at this point. The committee has Ole Miss number 9, I believe, so not a huge discrepancy there. Rebels are having a terrific season. Their only loss coming in Tuscaloosa, as you mentioned, Brett. They have had some wins that are maybe closer than you'd like to see from a team that is racking them up here and playing with some fire here. But with a power rating of number 15 this week, it's the lowest I've had the Rebels in the power rating since week 1. So, Brett, to your point about is this team really playing kind of a high level of football, right now they're really not. They're number 13 in my relative scoring margin metric. That's the worst Ole Miss has been in that metric all year as well. So it really serves to highlight that despite this 5-game winning streak, the Rebels are slowly trending in the wrong direction with regard to how they're playing relative to how we expected based on what we've seen to date with them and what the model's projecting for them. So the offense is still really good. Grades out number 10. The defense is down to number 29. That could be an issue on the road this week in Athens. Bottom line, I do have Georgia -7. It's a 69% win expectancy for the Dogs to get their first win against the Rebels, as we talked about, since 2012. To close it out here, again, I ragged on Georgia CFP ranking to open. Georgia fans, if you win this week and you get past Tennessee next week, which my numbers suggest you will be favored in each of these games, my most deserving rankings will catch up. They will have a different view of this resume. My point is, just to date, I have the same argument with Michigan. To date, they haven't done enough against the schedule because they haven't had enough on the schedule to deserve being ranked that highly when you have other teams out there that have achieved more against their schedules relative to what would be expected. So just keep winning, Georgia. It'll take care of itself as it always does for you guys, especially in recent years. But that's how I'm viewing, that's how the model is viewing this team and this game, Brett. Should be a really, really good one here in Athens.
Boy, how can we further make Georgia and Ole Miss fans angry in one single breakdown? It is very funny, though, when you look at, you have Ole Miss number 6 in your most deserving, and when you frame it that they've only lost on the road at Alabama, nobody can blame that. Versus how I framed it, it is very funny. Yours are with numbers and models and unbiased things, and mine is just apparently because I just obviously hate Ole Miss.
But the model agrees with you, though, Brett. The model agrees with you that their play is trending the wrong way. And that, to me, like when you're looking at handicapping this game and how's the rest of the season going to play out, and you said you wouldn't use the word fraud, but for lack of a better term, the fraudulent nature of it, the model agrees because that's how they've been trending, which is important as we look forward. But from a resume standpoint, they're picking up the wins, with the exception of Alabama, so they need to get credit for that.
Yeah, and Jackson Dart's a player that I've been critical of last year as well. He has improved this year, but when you look at his best games, they came against LSU, bad defense, and Texas A&M, bad secondary. He's been pretty remedial against everybody else. For me, this is Georgia with the points. Ole Miss has a strong power ratings baseline that I disagreed with from the start, and that's of course going to be carried over week over week and favor them in the models. I'm going against the models. I am. It's Georgia with the points for me. We talked about one game in which the quarterback was a really big deal. And now here's a second game in which I think the quarterback situation is also a really big deal. We have Rice on the road at UTSA, not to juxtapose our recent SEC blockbuster with something to upstage it, but UTSA is a 14.5-point home favorite, and this game carries an over-under of 58.5 points. Kicks off at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPNU. JT Daniels left last game with an injury, I put that in quotes, and he's doubtful to play. Look, it was concussion likely. They tagged it as a head injury, but he still played, man. That's a little concerning considering he did not remember much after the hit. Why was he still in the game? It came late in the game, and then a week for something that's potentially that severe, not enough time to recover. They call him doubtful. I call him out. I had a whole thing about getting ahead of line movement because I wrote this earlier in the day, and of course the news broke midday, so I had to scrap a lot of stuff that I had here. I hope you did. I did get ahead of the line movement before it was actually reported that Daniels was doubtful. Now that's a moot point as we move through 14. But before the bye week, if you're looking at UTSA, they were 1-3. Their lone win came in a very close margin over Texas State. Frank Harris was not healthy. Since then, they're 5-0. Frank Harris has been a lot better. However, they are missing one of their top receivers, JT Clark. He's now undergoing season-ending surgery, and that's been a big deal not having him in the lineup, of course. You also have to look at the strength of schedule in this 5-game win streak. Temple, UAB, FAU, East Carolina, North Texas. No teams above 95th in the power ratings baseline that I use. Only FAU is even above 105th, so we're talking about a pretty weak strength of schedule there. Rice, on the other hand, they've been really competitive lately. Crushed Tulsa. Not exactly a big resume builder, but they took Tulane to the final gun, and they played right with SMU the whole game. So to me, it really comes down to who these teams have played lately when you compare recent performance and splits. Again, JT Daniels being out is tough. If for some reason that reverses and he's trending toward playing, I wouldn't be afraid to jump on Rice because I think that this is a team that, even though the record hasn't been as good lately, they've been playing better football against better competition than UTSA. one thing on Rice's defense that they do really well, they're a big bend but don't break. So you can move the ball down the field on them, but when they get backed up, they hold you to field goals more so than touchdowns. That keeps them in games. UTSA is 54th in points per quality possessions, but they are better in the red zone over the last 3 games. Again, that has a little bit to do with their strength of schedule versus their red zone performance on the season as a whole.
I got to start by talking again as a reminder about my numbers, my model, not explicitly accounting for a JT Daniels potential injury here or unavailability here. So keep that in mind when I'm talking about what the model says, the unit rankings, the projected spread, all those things. Watchability with this one's 5.5. The model, without knowing the JT Daniels news explicitly, has UTSA -8. Again, I'm not going to suggest that, JT Daniels is worth 6.5 points to the spread. I don't think that's the case. But it doesn't know about JT Daniels at all. So perhaps somewhere between the 8 and 14.5 is where the model would make it if JT Daniels was playing in this game. 69% win expectancy for the Roadrunners. UTSA, SMU, Tulane, all 5-0 in conference play. Roadrunners closed the season with a trip to Tulane. So this week's game against Rice and next week against USF are huge to try to remain undefeated going into that game. This game is at UTSA. UTSA offense, the best unit on the field. You talk about Frank Harris, how they're playing here recently. Those advantages should be enough to keep the Roadrunners unbeaten in conference play. Again, not even accounting for the fact that JT Daniels might not play, which of course does hinder Rice and that offense, which has been their better unit this season. The defense continues to struggle for Rice. They rank number 120 nationally. 2 consecutive losses in the last 2 weeks. Brett, you mentioned that the Owls were playing very well in those games, very competitive against good competition, Tulane and SMU. Because of that, Rice's power rating is actually up to a season best -5.1 and a number 87 ranking. The offense has been the primary reason here with JT Daniels at the helm in those games for the majority of them. They're up to a season best number 59 on the offensive side of the ball for Rice. So the defense concerning, the offense with JT Daniels in particular has been the bright spot. Bottom line, I have UTSA -8 in this game. It's a 29% chance that Rice snaps its 7-game losing streak in this series, Brett.
The replacement, Chase Jenkins, he's a freshman. He went 10 for 16, threw a pick. Again, it was against SMU, though, and SMU's defense is really good. Yeah. He was pressured 8 times, only took 1 sack. That's really encouraging to me. 9.9 ADOT, so not terrible. I really do think JT Daniels is worth 6.5 points to the spread. I know that's outlandish. Like, that's a very high number, but again, when you talk about JT Daniels' worth to the spread versus, say, Michael Penix, clear superior quarterback. That is not a competition. They're barely playing the same sport. But when you talk about the relative talent around the quarterback, JT Daniels is everything to this Rice team. Yes, they played in a bowl game last year at 5-7. Thank you, APR. This team is a lot better with JT Daniels than without him. Jenkins played okay. I wouldn't trust him for a full game, especially now that there's a little bit of tape out on him. So I really do think JT Daniels is worth that much. All right, we have a Pac-12. It was supposed to be a blockbuster. Not quite the same luster as maybe we thought it was going to be before the season, but still, endlessly fascinating game. We talk about USC just about weekly on this, and that's because their schedule is backloaded. So we're going to talk about them again. USC on the road at number 6, Oregon. Oregon is a 15.5-point home favorite. And this game carries an over-under of course, 73.5 points. Get used to that. As long as this USC team is constructed the way that it is, you will not see a total under 70. This game kicks off at 10:30 p.m. Eastern on Fox. The Brian Ferentz era is over. The Alex Grinch era is also finally over. After how many years at Oklahoma and USC of not doing anything? The thing to me that is very funny is it was Washington dropping 52. That was the final straw, but not Cal dropping 49. One of those is a little bit more concerning than the other, in my humble opinion. Also, a big question. It's probably a dumb question. It's narrative speculation. Kelly, is Caleb Williams going to play in this game? I haven't seen anything to suggest that he won't, but everybody saw the end of the game after Washington. That is a scene that at least it doesn't strike me as someone who continues playing at the very least in his home stadium again. I haven't heard anything about him not playing. I know that's speculative, but would it surprise you to hear you say that, Caleb was shutting it down?
Yes, it would surprise me.
Fair.
For this reason, Brett. Not because I understand why he would do it. Unfortunately, this is for better or worse in every aspect of life. Perception is reality. The perception that I think it would give to the world and to NFL teams and to future teammates in the NFL, this dude just quit on his team. And they still, I mean, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to say it because how they're playing right now and they're not trending the right way. This team is not out of the Pac-12 championship race yet. They're not. They win this game and they're still very much in this mix. There's only 2 regular season games left for USC. Remember, most teams have 3 at this point. They only have 2. It's this road trip to Oregon and then UCLA at home. I don't think Caleb Williams would not play in this game unless he's medically not cleared to play, or if they say behind this, like, hey, I'm not playing because of an injury, because I don't think that Caleb Williams wants that message out there, that perception out there of this dude quit on his team. I don't think it's a good look for Caleb Williams. I don't think it's a good look for USC. I don't think we're going to get that in this case, if for anything else other than just the perception that it is. And there's still something to play for USC. I know people don't want to say that, and I know they're saying, dude, there's no way this team cannot beat Oregon. This team will not, have a chance. They're still right there. They can still do it if they can find a way in this game. We'll see. But I would be surprised.
Yeah, and we'll see who actually watched or listened to us the full way through based on the comments that we're going to get from what I just said. Look, I'm handicapping USC like he's playing. Like let's just put that out there. I just had to mention it. And actually, the point you just made about how does that carry into the NFL? I actually got in a Twitter spat with Emmanuel Acho, notorious goofball, and I made that same thing. I'm like, if you were in the NFL locker room, because he's all for Caleb Williams quit, even though he yells it back. I don't need to get into this, but either way, it's a point that I made.
I'll go check it out.
Yeah, it's from a while back. He poor shamed me. It's okay. Anyway, the I'm sorry. I didn't need to bring that here. It's really a question around what kind of effort, though, we are going to see from this team putting forth. And yes, this is kind of the last stand that they have. Mm-hmm. If you lose this game, your season is over. You are playing in the Holiday Bowl. Nobody's going to play. But if you win this game, like you said, you are still in it. I still, at least, if they come out and get punched in the face by Oregon right away, I don't know that I can trust this team to put forth any sort of effort for the remainder of the game. It kind of seemed like the Washington game was that last gasp. At least initially, to me, this feels like a spot where Oregon just comes in and beats the absolute hell out of this team, like situationally. And we saw it when they went up against Colorado. And at that time, Colorado obviously much less talented than USC, but we saw them come out of the gate riding high, a bunch of hype around this team, and Oregon just shut that down at home so fast. This is another opportunity to do that. Another opportunity for Dan Lanning to flex his muscles and say, look, we're a freaking good team. We lost to Oregon barely on the road in a game we maybe could have won. Like, we are a legit college football playoff contender. And I'm not so sure that if Oregon and Washington meet again in the Pac-12 championship, that I'm not picking Oregon to win that game. So a lot to play for here. I could see this being complete domination by Oregon, in my opinion. USC, they are without a key piece of their secondary, one of their few really talented players. Zion Branch, he's a safety. He's out for the year. He hasn't played the last couple of weeks. Oregon on the other end, massive trench advantage in this game on both sides, but especially with the Ducks' offensive line. The pass rush on the other side also has an opportunity. Caleb Williams has taken 25 sacks in Pac-12 play, including 18 of them in the last 4 games, most of which are his own fault. He's playing out of he's not playing within a system. He's getting sacked a lot. Against good pass rushes like Oregon's, he takes sacks. Oregon has a really good pass rush. They're at almost a 9% sack rate on this season. That's top 20 nationally. One injury note for Oregon, though. Keep an eye on Bucky Irving, dynamic running back. He did not practice on Tuesday.
Brett, after the final Washington touchdown last week, the camera panned to Alex Grinch. And I kid you not, man, you could literally see it on his face. I said to my wife when I watched, I said, he looks like he knows he's getting fired. You could just see it. Like, I think this is it. And I agree with you. Why was it against Washington and not the 49 to Cal? Like, I absolutely agree with you. I don't know why this was the last straw, but you could see, if you were still watching that game and you were paying attention, you could see just the exasperation on his face of like, yeah, I'm done. This is it. Like, I'm out. I'm just going to clear out my office and that'll be it. Either way, Brett, I'm curious to see what changes, if any, this USC defense makes the rest of the way. And they only have 2 games left in the regular season. We'll see what the future holds for them postseason-wise, whether it's conference championship or bowl season after that. So the game has a watchability score of 8.7. It's a top 5 game of the week for me. I know it's lost some luster, but these are still 2 teams from a power rating standpoint that grade out really, really well. And yes, they're trending in different directions, but this is a good game. And we'll see if USC has the fight and the fortitude to go up to Eugene and lay it on the line, or if they packed it in. I mean, it'll become apparent quickly, as you mentioned. I have Oregon minus 12.5 in this game. It's an 82% win expectancy for the Ducks. You can make a case, Brett, that no team has been playing better this past month than Oregon. The Ducks are number 2 in my relative scoring margin metric. They're outscoring their opponents by 15.2 points per game more than would be expected of the average top 25 team against Oregon's schedule. They're number 3 in my power ratings for the 3rd consecutive week. The offense, led by Bo Nix, is number 1 for the 2nd straight week for me in my unit power rankings. And the defense is up to a season best number 17. This team is just trending in the right direction at the right time. That defense, though, for Oregon, they're going to be tested. This USC offense, again, assuming Caleb Williams is playing and fully motivated and all of those things, which I still think he will be. I really do. And I'm not saying that, hey, if they're down 14 at half, that doesn't change in the second half. But I think coming out of the locker room into this game, they're gonna throw one final haymaker. USC is, and if they can land it and stay in the game and push Oregon around a little bit, maybe at least with the offense, I think we'll see a good game. If it goes the other way and, hey, we threw it and it didn't land, and then Oregon came back and punched us in the mouth twice, and now we're down 14-0 in the first quarter, it could spiral and Oregon could put up 60. I mean, they really could. So we'll see early how it goes. That Oregon defense, though, my point, they're going to get tested. This USC offense is number 2 in the country for me currently. It's the biggest test the Ducks D will face all season. Unfortunately for USC, that's where the good news ends. The defense is a season worst number 85. I really don't know, Brett. It's bad, man. I really don't know if the D coordinator change is going to spark a huge turnaround in the final 2 weeks. Like, to me, making this change in the offseason, but making this change after Notre Dame, you've given yourself a chance to potentially try to correct some things in a long enough runway in the second half of the season to try to go out and continue to win games. At this point, I think that the runway is just too short. So you might be making tweaks. You might do something a little different schematically here, but you're not going to just fundamentally change how you're playing defense with 2 games left in the regular season. It could inject some life, though. Anytime you get a shake-up, it could inject some life into the unit. That's for sure.
They don't have the talent, though. That's the thing. It's not. They have some talent, but not a lot. I don't think they have enough talent to turn around 85 into even 30.
Correct. I agree with you there. And this isn't what you were saying, so I won't say I disagree, but I want to clarify. They have enough talent to not be 85. They have enough talent to be a top 40, 45 defense. And I think I had them somewhere around number 50 coming into the year, 55 maybe. It's bad. It's embarrassing that USC is, I don't care who the coach is, who the coordinator is, USC, just Southern Cal, the Trojans, should not be number 85 on the defensive side of the ball in any year ever. They just shouldn't be. It's embarrassing is what it is. And I think USC fans would agree with that. So I don't think I'm taking a shot at them. It's, hey, I expect better of USC. I think they do as well. What's worse for USC, they have a 14.5 power rating. That's a corresponding ranking number 17. Those are both season lows, the worst I've had USC power rated all year. So they are trending the wrong way. Oregon is trending the right way. We have the top 2 offenses in the nation going at it here against the number 17 and number 85 defenses. I think that, plus the 85 defense is the one that's going on the road to a hostile environment. That, to me, is going to be the difference. I don't see USC keeping it all that close. But again, we'll see. Do they have one final trick up their sleeve to try to stay in this thing? If you put it all together, Oregon minus 12.5 is what my numbers make it. It's an 18% chance that USC avoids, Brett, what would be 4 losses in 5 games. We talked in the preseason about, hey, USC doesn't play anybody the first half. It's the back half that's going to kill them. I didn't think USC was going to go undefeated, but man, I didn't think that they'd lose 4 out of 5 games, which is potentially where we could be here. An Oregon win just about solidifies the Pac-12 championship game matchup, while a USC win, as I mentioned earlier, it keeps the race alive for that second spot in Las Vegas.
So, look, we really haven't talked about the Heisman that much since the season started, but I do want to talk about it now because we're down to 2 and 2 halves of players here. Michael Penix, Bo Nix. Clear top two. You have Jordan Travis, you have J.J. McCarthy, you have very far outside chances of Marvin Harrison and Beck. If you're looking to bet Bo Nix on the Heisman, do it before this game. Because if he goes out and has a huge day or just even a better day than Michael Penix, he'll be an odds-on favorite by next week. Now, the other way that you can treat this, because I don't think Oregon's going to lose either of the last two games. I'm sorry, they have 3 games left. I don't think they're going to lose before the end of the season, especially since they lost to Oregon State last year. In the way that they did, I don't think that they're going to lose. And they do have Arizona State, which could be kind of trappy, but I don't think so. Either way, I'm almost looking at either betting Michael Penix Jr. on the Heisman or Bo Nix on the Heisman as your Washington-Oregon Pac-12 championship money line. You could treat it that way because I really do believe that if these teams win out and they rematch in the Pac-12 championship game, the winner of that, I believe, will win the Heisman.
It's fair.
They don't.
Yeah,
they don't take postseason into account.
I paused to think about it. I think that's fair. And if that is how you're thinking about it, and that's how you suggest that this conversation be framed, then I'll tell you my numbers would say that Bo Nix is the lean here because Brett, that projected spread for me has grown now all the way to Oregon -7 in a potential Pac-12 championship rematch. And people will say, Kelly, Washington already won that game. They already played. I agree. And it was a great game. Yeah, it was. And it was so much fun. And I'd watch that thing again if it was on right now. But that game was in Seattle. The teams are different now than they were then. Washington's getting credit for that win. Trust me. I've got Washington number 3 in my most deserving rankings. I've got Oregon number 10. So the committee has got them 5 and 6. I got a big gap in there. And that's Washington's getting huge credit for winning that game, as they should. And that win's looking better and better and better as Oregon continues to improve their power rating here week in and week out. But the problem is Oregon's improving their power rating week in and week out. Washington maybe is not, or they're not by my numbers right now. They still have time to turn it around, of course. But right now, my numbers would make it Oregon -7. I don't think Vegas would open it -7, but I think Vegas would open it maybe 6.5 even. Like I think Vegas would open it right about there, trying to bait people into taking Washington while they know, hey, this Oregon team right now, the snapshot, they're legit.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'd probably bet Bo Nix. I see a +200 as we speak now. I would do it now. Don't wait till next week. If you are betting Bo Nix, if you're looking to jump on the Michael Penix train, wait, hold. wait till that Bo Nix number gets bet down. You can get a better number on Penix. But yeah, I'm looking at the Heisman race right now in a look ahead money line spot for the Pac-12 championship game 3 weeks in advance.
I'll just say either one of those guys, I'd be pretty happy for.
Yeah.
I'm happy for anyone who wins the Heisman. I will say, and I won't name any names. There are years where the Heisman Trophy winner, I'm like, not my favorite player in college football. Just something about it. I don't really love it. I think both Bo Nix and Michael Penix, I'd be very happy for either one of them. It'd be very cool to see one of them win the Heisman Trophy.
They deserve it. They've been through injuries. They're on their second spots. They were down and out. It'd be an awesome story. Would love to see either one of those guys for sure. All right, Kelly, let's wrap this up. We've been running long, but hey, we're at the point of the college football season where there needs to be this kind of discussion because there's so much nuance and data points and we can't be flying through these games. This one we can move a little bit quicker through, but it is, my darling, my FCS game of the week. I'd like to feature the Delaware Hens, if you are so inclined. We have Delaware on the road at Campbell in a CAA blockbuster matchup. Kicks off at 1 p.m. on a streaming service that is not ESPN+. Flow Sports? I don't know, man. I don't have access to it. But either way, this is an interesting matchup because both of these teams are coming off losses, very different losses. Delaware lost their first game of the season to Elon. It was a surprise. They were ranked number 5 in the country. And then Campbell, of course, ran into a buzzsaw that is North Carolina. The Hens have one of the better defenses in the FCS. They're actually one of the best third down and red zone defenses in the FCS, which to me is very important, even more important than just your average down-to-down success rate. They're allowing fewer than 21 points per game. Chase McGowan, how about him? An edge rusher for Delaware. He's playing at All-American level, 7 sacks, 20 run stuffs, 27 pressures. Absolute animal out there. On the other side, Campbell quarterback Haj Malik Williams has nearly a 27% pressure to sack ratio. He's going to need to shorten that time to throw, otherwise Delaware's going to be all over him all day. On the other side, Delaware's running back, Marcus Yarns, he's been fantastic. 14 rushing touchdowns. That's the second most in the FCS. 7.5 yards per attempt. Kelly, what do your numbers say about my favorite game that we've talked about today?
Brett, my numbers say that number 7 power-rated Delaware is minus 14.5 at number 53 power-rated Campbell. That's about the extent of what I've got for you here from the FCS Light model. But, Brett, I will say I like to put my college football fandom really up against anybody's. I'm not saying I'm a bigger fan than anyone. I'm just saying I'm not sure how many fans out there are bigger than me in terms of their love for college football. I put myself right there with anyone on that. Invest a lot of time into the power ratings, the graphics, the research, the actual consumption of the games, like a lot of time, effort, energy, resources for me.
All the TVs.
Go into enjoyment of college football. Brett, I'm going to give you 2 categories in which you have a decided advantage over me in terms of fandom of the game. That would be FCS, 1. Your love for it is admirable, and I hope one day I'm able to have the capacity to love FCS as you do. And 2, your love of bowl season, and it's becoming more and more apparent as we get closer and closer to it. I'm very excited to do a bowl season episodes with you as we get closer, because I know there will be a few with so many games. Those are 2 areas, man, that I gotta say, I really respect your dedication for them, your love for them. It certainly outpaces mine in those areas, and I think it's just cool. It's infectious energy. I enjoy talking about this game every week, the FCS game, because of you, and I'm sure I'll enjoy talking about the bowl games because of you as we get to that point in the season too. But I will be sad when we get to that point, because that means my beloved regular season, not that you don't love the regular season, I know you do too, my beloved regular season will be behind us, which is always my least favorite time of year.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, Kelly. Just wait. I'll do it myself. I don't care. I just wait till we have the FCS playoffs breakdown. Oh, buddy, I'm going to be in here talking about it. I love the FCS playoffs. They're so great. I think that they actually are the superior postseason to what we have in the FBS, but I do love me some good.
All the good things I just said about you, Brett, out the window with the last comment there. Get out of here.
Well, I think that's a good note to close up shop for our Week 11 Saturday breakdown. Almost an hour and 20 into it. How about it? Hop on over to our Discord server where you can connect with over 4,000 sports betting fans and get live updates on our college football channel. There, you can join a very sharp and very active community. And don't forget to subscribe to Lines YouTube for weekly college football odds and betting videos for the rest of the season and postseason on both sides. Subscribe to us on your podcasting app of choice, be it Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, you name it, and drop us a good review if you like the show. Also, let us know where you lean on all of these bets. We laid out a lot in front of you. We get a lot of I agree, disagree. Lay out what you're betting this weekend. Kelly, before we close up shop, please let everybody listening know where they can find your work.
Absolutely. You can find me on X at KFord Ratings, the website kfordratings.com. It's now got merchandise available on the homepage there. And of course, over at thelines.com, a couple articles every single week. We talked about 2 of the games that I'll be writing about in the watchability column this week, Michigan and Penn State and Georgia and Ole Miss, 2 blockbuster games, a lot of conference championship game leverage in each of those. And then, of course, how do the CFP rankings compare to my most deserving rankings? It's that time of year. Everyone wants to talk about it. Everyone wants to break down the nitty-gritty of the schedules, really what's the razor thin margins, how do we draw these lines, what gives one team the edge over the other. I get into that column as well. Both of those over at thelines.com every single week. Brett, so excited to be a part of the team and doing this podcast with you, and I cannot wait. I've talked myself into now this bowl season. I'm just the energy is so infectious. I can't wait.
Oh, I love bowl season. Oh, we've got a lot planned for bowl season along the way. But thank you so much as always for watching. I'm Brett Gibbons. That's Kelley Ford. We'll catch you all next time.